case you're wondering, it's college / Branson / nothing on a hoodie night for the board.
They may
So
have
welcome.
a college down there. You don't know.
All right, so we need a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? It passes. We need a motion to approve the Board of Education meeting minutes for December 6, 2018.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, everyone in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes. All right, next we have patron comments. So we do have a comment tonight. So during patron comments, citizens may address the Board of Education concerning issues related to the school district. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes. Please know that the board's discretion, the board or superintendent may respond immediately to an issue raised during patron comments for clarification. However, our general practice is to respond to the comment at a later time via phone call or written message if a response is needed. We have a table of microphones ready, so both the board and the audience may hear the patron comments clearly. Board meeting proceedings are also recorded and posted on Rockwood's YouTube channel. This evening we do have a comment, so for your convenience, our 3-minute clock is ready, so we welcome Tom Dunn to step forward. Good evening.
Good evening. And thank you for seeing me again. I was here a year ago today. This is in regards to Eureka's pool. As everyone well know that Eureka's pool is the oldest in the district. The other 3 schools have a 25-yard by 8-lane pool, whereas Eureka is a 6-lane 25-meter pool, which is a major disadvantage to the Eureka swimmers, whether it be for the boys season, girls season, or for even water polo. I know Dr. Nost made a comment last year that it was kind of on his bucket list to try and remedy. Unfortunately, he is now leaving, but hopefully the new board will look forward to or look to see what we can do to get a new pool. So we are, the parents of Eureka are asking for the board's help to please try and do that. And I put down a bunch of reasons why a new pool is necessary. There is no timing system, so for anybody that swims at that pool, a state cut in order to qualify for the state meet is very, very difficult to obtain. The Eureka girls team only has 2 home meets this year, which of course everybody loves to have home meets, whereas Summit and Marquette have 9 and Lafayette has 6. There's no balcony seating, so parents have to sit on bleachers as well as the swimmers that are literally 3 feet away from the pool, and it's a very wet pool deck, which opens up liability issues for the school district. The pool depth is actually unsatisfactory in regards to the National Federation of High Schools. The Eureka pool depth is only 3 feet at the shallow end and 10 feet at the deep end where the diving board is at. A couple years ago, Eureka was going to try and replace the diving board. Unfortunately, they found out that they would not be grandfathered in with their pool depth that they currently have, and so that means they would have to get a new pool. So they are using old equipment that is substandard compared to everybody else. There's also no storage. Some of the equipment is actually stored outside. I did put pictures in with my presentation just to kind of so you guys could look at your leisure. The ideal situation would be that a new pool is built, preferably on the north end of campus, 50-meter by 25-yard pool, because I understand the standard now is what Kirkwood has or Pattonville has, where they have a much bigger facility. The pool could be used year-round by the school and Rockwood Swim Club, among other organizations. They could host U.S. swim competitions and bringing in revenue that way. It could host water polo tournaments for the entire Rockwood School District. It could host the state swim meet, which is currently held at St. Peter's Redplex. It would be a better training facility, and it would also be unique to West County as the only place to practice platform diving, if that was to be added. Another bonus would be the tennis team could share the locker rooms because the tennis courts are right there, instead of having them walk all the way over to where their locker rooms are currently. And what would you want to do with a current pool? You could put lattice work inside the pool, not necessarily demolish it, but put scaffolding in there, put a floor on there, and make it a wrestling arena. So that's what I have.
Tony, where on the north end of the school are you talking about?
It would be over by the tennis courts in the back end there. There's a
It'd have
picture,
to
there's
be
a map
closer to the school, between the tennis courts and the building?
in the building, yes, sir. There's a map I included in my handout.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Good looking picture.
Well, you could thank Google Maps for that.
Is there no room where the existing pool is to put a new pool?
That's actually, I was going to make a few comments, hoping you'd stay a little bit. I was going to make a few
absolutely.
comments in my superintendent's report, but I'll just, since Dr. Kinder brought it up, just to be clear, anytime we talk about this, this will take a bond issue. That's the issue, and it's been considered. We did a bond issue in 15 and a bond issue in 17, chock full of very needed things, and we contemplated, adding even another. I don't remember where we were at on costs. I think it was up to maybe 15 to 17 million. I think.
Right,
is what
you said it was about 15 million, and you felt the referendum was going to fail if it went over 100
Well,
million.
I was worried about the 100 mark, and the other thing too is that our last two bond issues, especially this last one, has been heavy Eureka. And of course we can't get a ballot measure passed in just Eureka area. We have to get it passed everywhere. I'm not making excuses because I agree with you. We eventually need to have a pool in Eureka High School is up to standard with the others. Of course, if we go as far as what you just said, then we'll have the others knocking on our door saying, well, they suddenly have and we do that in the district. We go, you ramp something up, but we're about to add a 90,000 square foot STEM center in the front that is going to be the envy of a lot of people. We're adding the new Eureka Elementary School, which was a need. So the need's there. It's on the list, I promise you, and I can't fathom, you're right, I won't be here, but I can't fathom that another bond issue would come up where that would not be one of the absolute priorities. And Dr. Kinder, to your point, and I can't address it, but there are some concerns about the area you are spelling out as far as digging for that. Originally, before the recent flooding, the area for that pool was on the south side of the science wing between Gym A and that area. But when we realized in the modern day flooding that digging a hole in the ground to put a pool in, that's not a good place. So the obvious place we probably would be doing, which would be an inconvenience, but it would probably be right where the current pool is, there would be a modification made to where it could be an appropriate size.
Our recommendation would actually be you could actually put the pool on what they would call a second level, have the locker rooms underneath the pool, and then the pool, so therefore the flooding issue would not really exist. You wouldn't have to really dig down.
You an engineer?
No, my father-in-law is, but I mean, I'm going by my
I say that in
experience
jest.
I know, and I understand,
Yeah.
and but my high school where I grew up, their pool was on the second floor.
Yeah, but my point to you, though, is that I think it's relative in that area, that flooding, as far as even city and getting approval and everything else, us building right there is probably just not ever going to happen.
If you looked at the aerial photo, not of what I did, but if you Google photo of the flood, that area was untouched by all the water.
Did you go to high school?
Chicagoland area.
Okay.
Yeah, you mean the north side that you're
Yes,
talking
sir.
about? Yeah, but I think there's other reasons in regarding excavating and the structure
And
and
as
all
far
that.
as where the existing pool is, I don't think it's a space constraint, and you can't even really build anything there. I mean, you have the locker rooms, you have the football stadium, you can't get heavy equipment.
We wouldn't do anything. We wouldn't do anything that the architects and the engineers weren't. I mean, when it happens, Rockwood always does things the right way in design. It will be an ample pool and the right pool. Agree with you wholeheartedly. It needs to be. It is on the priority list. Paul knows that. So beyond me, Paul, our CFO, who's over facilities. Chris Friend knows that. Chris Friend graduated from Eureka High School. So everybody knows it, needs it, wants it. It will take a bond issue to do it. And I would say the next time there's a bond issue up, I'll come back and sit there if you want and ask the board to make sure that they're considering a pool for
I
that.
have a 7-year-old, so I'll be around for
Yeah.
a while. And so, I mean, that's, and I know that people have been asking for a new pool at Eureka probably since Lafayette and Marquette and Rockwood Summit were built.
Absolutely.
Thank you you very much.
Good information, thank you.
All right, next we have superintendent board comments, so Dr. Knost.
All right, a few things to talk about, and just kind of a heads up, I've got some things to share, and then I shared with the board that instead of creating an agenda item tonight, I'm going to yield about 6-8 minutes or so to Paul Ziegler from Ed Plus to talk a little bit about our partnership there. So I'll keep my comments brief for Eric Knost. First thing, we always like to publicly announce administrative hires that we do in closed session. And tonight we're happy we had a vacancy for our coordinator for benefits because Lori Roach left to take a job elsewhere. And our current human resources specialist, Brenda Tinsley, is the candidate that rose to the top, and we're all thrilled that we were able to fill this position with Brenda. So our new benefits coordinator is Brenda Tinsley. So let's all welcome Brenda. And thank you for being here for that very short announcement, but we are thrilled, and I can share with you that the conversation was very uplifting in closed session. So welcome, Brenda, and we're thrilled that you're in that role. All right, a few other things. I want to mention, if you recall last year, unfortunately, shortly after another school tragedy, I put together our team to do an audit of our safety and security, not only our plan that was in place, but our plan going forward. And I've told you over and over again, we've had examples. Every law enforcement agency's looked at that. We feel really good about all that they said, and when we compare it to even state-of-the-art things around the country, we fare really well. But one little piece that was part of that and just worth mentioning is, some of our schools have, when you start seeing some of these terrorism-related incidents where vehicles were being used to penetrate either people-populated areas or even buildings. And so some of our schools have ballards that block the front. If you think mostly, like I call, Crestview has what I call the target balls, those red balls that are in front of Target. We have similar out there. It doesn't look like a Target store, but so as part of our safety and security review, the board approved the installation of ballards, or in some cases like large filled planters in an additional 23 Rockwood school buildings. So it's just another, what sounds like a minor piece, but just to further secure our buildings and keep our kids safe. So we're really, really pleased with that, and want to make sure to mention that. This is kind of cool. You all are familiar with our biodiesel program at Summit, which is, I think, probably second to no other example of something like that around the country, where kids are actually converting French fry grease to biodiesel fuel. But a certain student may have developed a way to extract oil from organic waste, and if she's successful, it could significantly be a significant development in the biodiesel industry. So Andrea, or Adriana, I think is what it is. She goes by Kiki Wagner. She's a senior and one of Darren Peters' Authentic Science Research students. And Peters says that Wagner will enter the St. Louis Honors Science Fair, where she will present her results to officials in the biodiesel industry. So that's a pretty cool thing, and it's so fun to be around those kids. It's just kind of like, hey, we're here doing, biodiesel work, and it's just very, very cool. Let's see, what else did I want to mention? If you didn't realize it, our 8-room addition at Gagey Elementary School, another Eureka project, is now open for business. Teachers moving in. It's exciting, and if you haven't got over there to walk through that wing, do so. It's a neat school anyway, and it just makes it that much nicer to be in, and for our kids to be proud of, and more space for the growth. Green Pines principal Paul Godwin has been named the St. Louis Suburban Elementary Association Distinguished Principal of the Year. he was surprised by the officers and a team of ourselves who showed up for a planned assembly that they had in place, and we surprised him and went in. And I think he knew it was coming, but he didn't know it was coming that day, and we had his family there as well. So congratulations to Paul. And then finally, I think we have a little video. Students at Utah Valley Elementary School knocked the socks off of holiday giving. 5 on your sides, Ryan Dean took notice of the good being done by this army of 3. And we have a video that we're going to share.
Like kids in our area doing great things for others. You have to see what's happening at the largest school district in St. Louis County.
A Rockwood elementary school is living up to the sign on its building. Ryan Dean has this 5 on your side original.
On a cold, windy day,
31, 32, 33.
something heartwarming happening inside Utah Valley Elementary in Fenton.
7, 8, 9. Oh, look at the cute winter socks, Nika.
A classroom project that's turned into a life lesson.
It's better to give than receive because...
Better to give than get.
Yeah.
It all started when 5th graders
Okay.
Julia,
26.
Grace, and Nika
3, 4,
were brainstorming during what the school calls a genius hour.
What's a genius hour?
Genius hour is when you get to do whatever you want, like not whatever.
What you're passionate about.
Yeah.
So your passion was to give back or what?
Give.
Yeah.
Yeah. 34.
Julia did a little research and learned socks are one of the most asked for items at homeless shelters.
All kids need socks. Short, small, everywhere. 10, 11.
She put herself in someone else's shoes.
I mean, if I didn't have any socks, I don't think I would not be able to live. Because my feet get cold so easily.
Yeah. Wednesday, Thursday.
So with the help of her friends,
Because I don't think I would have been able to pull it off by my own.
they started this sock drive and started a friendly competition to see which grade could donate the most.
They have 212. To get kids interested in it, if someone wins, they get a 45-minute recess, and it's up to the teacher.
Wow, 45, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Because everybody loves recess.
They knocked the socks off their goal of 1,000 pairs.
First grade has 280. And the final total is 1,496.
A big number from big hearts inside this school, known for thinking of others. In Fenton, Ryan Dean, 5 on your side.
The sock drive runs through Friday. In addition to an extended recess on the line, the kids get to have a pajama day because they already surpassed their goal. You know, kids doing great things for our city during the holidays. Let us know. Email us at newstips@ksdk.com.
And that was today.
Yes. And if you don't know this already, pajama days are the biggest over anything that kids love. If you go to a school during pajama day, oh yeah, exactly. Staff too. I was at Vandover. I was at Vandover today, and a teacher couldn't stop apologizing and wanted to make sure that I understood that it was pajama day and that she doesn't come to work that way every day. All right. Last but not least, again, I want to introduce Paul Ziegler. I've had the honor of knowing Paul for a long time. He's been in the executive director role now for a few years. I also had the honor of being the chair for Ed Plus last year, so got to work with Paul. He's really stabilized Ed Plus, and I think brought back some high quality to the organization. We partner with him much, so he's just here to talk a little bit about our partnership.
Thank you for the opportunity, and I am trying to make it out to all 53 districts. So here's my clicker. So, and that's what I am here to share is who are we? We're 53 school districts. That represents over 500 schools in the St. Louis area. It's over 29,000 teachers and almost 300,000 students. And the reason that's important is that's roughly about a third of the student population in the state. So we represent a large portion. How do we serve our members? We really do that 3 ways: business services, learning services, and network and advocacy. When you think of our business services, one of the big things we do is cooperative purchasing. You all participate in that on a regular basis. And what we do there is we work with vendors to try and negotiate contracts so that our districts don't have to go through that bidding process. We handle the bidding process, keep the paperwork so that they can engage in that. We do that through 2 different ways. AEPA is our national contract. We work with 26 other states to bid those organizations that have a more national footprint, Adactronics, CDWG, people that participate in all those states, and then we award those contracts locally. We also do local bids, CI Select. You all buy a lot of furniture through CI Select. We work with them to negotiate a catalog discount so that when you want to buy a chair, you don't have to go out and try to bid that each time. We bid that for you. And we then enter into those contracts with local vendors. We also do a P-card rebate. While you all participate in the P-card, you don't participate in ours. But last year, we were able to give back about $400,000 to districts. We do that by pooling that and bringing together the total spend of all those districts in order to maximize the rebate. Again, you all participate. I don't mean to say you don't. You just don't participate in ours. So again, that's something we offer to member districts. MoReap, that's our job clearinghouse. We actually own that software. So a lot of districts throughout the region and the state post to that MoReap, whether it's a teacher, nurse, principal. Those get posted there. But since we own that software, we actually sell that to other states as well. New Mexico, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, they all buy that software and have their own opportunity to post their jobs through a clearinghouse as well. Comp data is something else we engage in. We collect real-time data from all of our school districts because currently the way that we collect in the state, it's always a year old. So for us, we collect that in real time, get that out to our districts now so that they can use that as they make decisions about going forward, whether that's salary, benefits, types, numbers of positions, things like that. From a learning perspective, last year we had almost 7,400 people come to learning events. We did that through 152 professional development events and did that also with 86 customized. Customized is when we go out to districts and work directly with them as opposed to bringing people to us. And then we do have 4 major conferences a year: METC, Character in Action, Support Staff Academy, and Align St. Louis. We deliver that through 4 different channels or resources. One, we have our Ed Plus staff ourselves. They typically are the ones going out and doing that customized PD. They work with our platform from year to year. So currently they're developing what we're bringing in next year now. So we're getting national speakers under contract to come in for those conferences and to provide those learning opportunities. And that's typically through our staff. We have Character Plus, who you're all familiar with. Obviously, you have many, many schools of character as well as a district of character. And they do the character education that we're familiar with, but also restorative practices, social-emotional learning, and trauma-informed education for our professionals. We have the St. Louis RPDC, or Regional Professional Development Center. And that is essentially DESI's arm that delivers initiatives throughout the region. We're the only one that is not connected to a university. The other 8, so there's 9 total in the state, are all connected to a state university. We actually are the largest, and through that we deliver those initiatives as DESI directs. And then METC, which is actually always considered a conference, but it's actually a community. And that's the Midwest Education Technology Community. And our conferences are biggest. We have over 2,000 people from typically as many as 15 states that will come to that conference. But also it's a community that goes year-round. They do Google Hangouts. They have tech advocacy. They do different things to make sure that we're delivering with our instructional technology the best we can for our kids. One thing we're really proud of is we were an ISTE affiliate, and that ISTE is the International Society of Technology and Education. And we were one of 4 affiliates, so we can certify people through their standards. With that, we have the very first 3 people that were ever certified through ISTE that are all on staff at Ed Plus, and we actually had the first training ever this summer, and had people from Japan that came to St. Louis to receive that training. And again, that's something to be proud of, and it's something we'll continue to grow. From a network and collaboration and communication standpoint, we have 30-plus learning networks that meet at our office. It's everything from the superintendents to nurses to support staff. They meet there on a regular basis. We provide them the space, operate their listserv to make sure people are aware of that. And we also sometimes, Dr. Knost had mentioned the tragedy last year in some of your responses. We try to respond to those as well. So last year after the Parkland tragedy, we got together law enforcement leaders and educational leaders together and had kind of a summit where we talked through how we could work through that, because we had angry kids, parents, angry administrators, all that were looking for some answers, so we needed to get together. That then springboarded us into another summit with just leaders of the education, in the education realm, that allowed us to talk through what that looked like for our region. And then we do provide communications, graphic design, and video support for districts as needed. From an advocacy standpoint, we develop a legislative platform that's unique to St. Louis, oftentimes mirrors very closely what an MSBA or an MASA platform, but we know there's some regional things in St. Louis that we need to address as well. Last year we did a bus trip to the Capitol where we took 35 superintendents and other educational leaders. We networked on the way up in a bus, visited with legislators in the Capitol, and then networked on the way home. And then typically during the session, I try to be in Jeff City once a week to make sure that the St. Louis K-12 education, that we're represented well with our legislators to make sure they understand what our needs are in the region. And then we do participate in other advocacy events around with our local districts. For you all, a few things that kind of specific to you. Dr. Knoll served on our Ed Plus board, as he said, was the chairman last year. You have 3 principals that currently attend our Missouri Leadership Development Series: Matt Brazillo, Kelly Sullenberger, and I'm going to struggle with this one, Kelly Mingeroni. Did I say that right? Migaroni, sorry. And then we also have a mentor from you all, and that's Karen Hedrick. Terry Harris is very active in our Restorative Practices Leadership Council. And then this year you were awarded 2 more National Schools of Character with LaSalle Springs Middle and Baldwin Elementary. And then lastly, Marquette High School participates in Gateway to Change, which is a thing we do through Character Plus. From a financial standpoint, people that have been on the board for a while know we had a spending problem at Ed Plus. I don't know what else to call it. There were years that we were outspending our revenue by as much as $1 million. This is my 2nd year in role. I'm proud to say that last year we actually turned that around and we had a $400,000 surplus. Now our goal is not to make money, but it is to restore some of those balances that were spent off and then continue to provide what kind of services our member districts need. And the reason that's important is the last piece, we celebrate 90 years this year. And that was part of my reason for wanting to go out and visit with the 53 districts to make sure everybody's re-engaged with what we do at Ed Plus. And to celebrate that, I brought a poster that we had done that represents the 53 districts that make up Ed Plus. It's got some points of interest in there as well. All the districts are represented by their logo, and then it has the history around the outside, some of the high points. So this was actually done by a school board member at Northwest. Sherry Talbot was a former art teacher, and it was a board member there, and I asked her to do this. It turned out much better than I thought. And I think what it really celebrates well is I've had opportunities through different roles and with state organizations to be all over the state. There's not another region that supports one another as well as we do. So this is your all copy. I hope you'll find some place to put that. And again, I just appreciate the opportunity to be out and share with you all, and certainly will entertain any questions if you have any.
Mr. Ziegler, it's good to see you again. It's been a couple of years. I was curious about the MoReap. I didn't realize that was yours. Do you own it for the whole state or just the St. Louis region?
We own it for the whole state, and we actually own the software. We do work with a company, Cybermill is the name of the company, so we do pay them a small royalty. But then when we sell it to like New Mexico, it becomes the NM REAP or whatever. But then we act as their help desk, so we have somebody on staff that works with that, acts as a help desk for Connecticut, for Pennsylvania, for New Mexico, for Vermont, and a few others, so that districts there can purchase that through their state organizations.
It's really great because every teacher coming out of a college, as far as I know, first thing you do is go to MoReap, and that really helps a lot. Thanks a lot. I didn't realize that.
Thank you very much.
Paul.
Appreciate the time.
Thank you.
And I'm going to step out because I thought I was done doing board meetings, but 53 this year, I think I might surpass most school boards. So thank you.
Paul.
See you, Paul.
Thanks. Board comments. Were you finished? You were good?
I'm done.
All right.
Thank you.
Board comments. Anyone have any board comments? Dr. Kinder?
I'm sorry, what?
Ms. Bays, board comments? Good to
Oh,
go?
yes. I do.
No, you don't. No, not right.
No, I have none.
Okay. I know what you're going to say. All right, next we need a motion to approve the consent agenda items as submitted. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Dr. Kinder?
Yes, I do have something on this one. There are 2 nice gifts. We get these seem like every board meeting. Gagey PTO has monetary $10,000 donation to new remodeled library. Money is being donated to Gagey Elementary from the PTO at Gagey to purchase supplies and items for the Gagey new library. Now, I know you guys can read, but I just thought I'd help you out a little bit on this one. The other one is Marquette High School, $2,500, and that is from CKE? Is that right? CKE Restaurants Holdings? Well, that's Hardee's. Marquette High School Art Program, student won an art contest, Hometown Hardee's photo contest. And that brings our grand total for this year to almost, well, no, exactly, $1,118,000, 468, no, $1,118,468. And a 3-year total, I'm sorry, that was the 3-year total. Let me try this again. For this year, $328,874, 3-year total of $1,118,468.
Wow.
That's pretty darn good.
Fantastic. Very good. Yes. All right, any other questions or comments about the consent agenda? All right, so the motion is to approve that consent agenda. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. All right, that passes. Next, we have Dr. Brent Underwood is back. Great, great to see you. Superintendent search update.
Still sitting in front of that camera over the back of your head.
Wear a hat next time. It's unfortunate. Thank you for the opportunity to be here again, and I wish Dr. Ziegler could have stayed. We've been kind of bypassing each other at a few of these board meetings, and I know he would have wanted to take the opportunity to remind everyone that that I helped facilitate the search where he was hired for that position too. Turnaround agent there, and he's doing a great job.
Did you do the one at House Springs too?
I did, as a matter of fact.
For him?
When he left.
Oh, when he left.
Okay, so let's get to it. We have some exciting news, good stuff, and I know I've been sending you a lot to read. Raise your hand if you've been diligent on your, okay, good, that's good. And somebody check on Matt because he's not here tonight. I want to make sure he's reading that. I do appreciate the opportunity to just give you a little update in terms of some of the activities that, are search related that have been going since last we met. First of all, we have to talk about the survey response. 1,951 people responded to our online survey, which is a fantastic number. What was even more fantastic was the percentage of students that filled that out. I was amazed. I'm sure I've not seen anything quite like that in all the online surveys that we've facilitated. I sent you, as promised a couple weeks ago, a little summary / analysis. It's really great, and Dr. Kinder will appreciate the research involved in this work that I did there. Clearly goes back to my doctoral student days with the non-parametric studies that I focused for you, but really just some kind of fairly obvious observations, but wanted to characterize for you, if just for a few minutes, to kind of explain that process that we talked about way back when. It's been a couple months now, when we talked about that profile phase of the search, because this really kind of brings to an end, or closing out that profile phase. All the different focus groups that we facilitated, the online surveys, the surveys that you filled out, all of that becomes a composite work that kind of serves as my North Star when I'm out there interviewing and screening and vetting and reference checking, looking for the kinds of things that our stakeholders, constituents here in Rockwood have told us that we should be looking for in our next superintendent of schools. I thought with real clarity there was a lot of synced up work, if you will, which was kind of exciting, and I hope you felt the same when you looked at the work that you all had done as a 7-member board, and then you saw the results of the almost 2,000 respondents on the survey, and you had the exact top 3 on when we asked you to rank those 10, and that tells you that in my mind that we're fairly well connected to the folks that you're elected to represent, and that's a good thing. If we had this big gaffe, or we're on different pages that may become problematic for us, clearly that is not the situation in Rockwood at the present time. I also tried to have you take a little look at where we ended up having the #1 rank and the #1 rank on some parallel questions that were on the surveys. But I also wanted you to take a minute, several minutes probably, if you really did, to read over 55 pages of comments that came really under 2 open-ended narratives. What are the strengths in the district as we think about it now, and what are some of the challenges facing the district moving forward? Because not only is that important for you to, as a little bit of a snapshot, and Kathy and I talked about this when we were generating, whether or not we'd use the online survey or And I think this tool does that for you, does provide for you some additional data that says, here are the things that we can agree on, and I just gave you the top 5, and I'm not going to read them to you, although, they're there for you on page 2, but it's always nice when right at the top our number 1 response is your staff. That's where the rubber hits the road. So if people in your community recognize that that's your number 1 strength, then that's a vindication of your HR folks and your administrators, and you're getting the right people in connected with kids. And so you can see those areas of strengths there. One of the things that I didn't share in this document that is probably a good thing for you to think about going forward, this is also an excellent little artifact that we can hand off to our next superintendent, whoever he or she is eventually, because it provides some great data for them in terms of thinking about what the community is saying, not only about how we're operating in terms of our strengths, but what are some of the challenges. And so we took a look at, what did folks have to say. Now, I didn't do this one in terms of frequency because snow days would have been number 1. But I did talk to you about some of the other things that I think you'll find as real great surprises here in every district in the world, all 14,000 in the United States. Finances and salaries are always going to make your top 5. We've heard a little bit about the overcrowding and your current growth, especially kind of the Eureka Quadrant area down there. A lot was mentioned. I was particularly interested in the comments about what I would call student health and safety issues, especially given the number of students that were responding to that. And I kind of characterized some of the findings there, kind of grouped them together, if you will. But that should not go unnoticed. That should not be glossed over. I think when we're talking to our kids about those and they're listing those as their current challenges, that tells us something that we ought to be listening as adults who are working with those kids. I thought it also telling that one of the top 5 things they identified was, hey, we like our superintendent that we have now. We think he's done a great job, and you've got a difficult job to replace him. And they told us that time after time. So again, just some clarity, I think, if you will, in terms of just to make it a little bit easier for you to take a look at the results of those 2 findings and to kind of sync them up with your survey results. And then the last thing I did was just maybe replicate for you some of those themes that ran through the different focus groups. Some of you were in attendance briefly at those and didn't see necessarily the results, but we did try to share with you the compilation of artifacts from each one of those 6 that we conducted. The last page, or last 2 pages there, I tried to provide, I think there's 10 or 11 different statements that I found frequently as common responses, feedback that we received throughout those focus groups. And so those kind of become themes for me, again, as I'm listening out there on your behalf. So not probably worth publication, this little piece of analysis, but certainly I think does help you have a little handle on what I've been collecting and some of the data I've been trying to summarize and use. I also use this to help write interview questions so that when I'm out, I'm asking questions that are, again, synced up with the things that folks are telling us. Started interviewing and screening last week, continued this week. Have 6 or 7 lined up for the winter break so far, and that number will probably grow a little bit too. Let's stop for a second. Any questions about any of that? Okay, great. Then one other handout I had for you there tonight, and that's fairly hot off the press, although not inclusive just yet, because we still have a few hours before the deadline for filing, and believe me, we'll have a couple people who will submit their application right at the deadline, which is tonight at midnight. But I wanted you to have just a real quick kind of demographic depiction, if you will, of where we are so far with that look. So earlier this afternoon, I think it was about 1 o'clock or so when I actually checked and we got online and checked all that. So there's a total of 17 candidates who have fully submitted, which means they've submitted all 45, 50 pages of documentation that are necessary as part of the requirement for that submittal. We had candidates who came to us from 8 states across the country, which is kind of interesting because a few of these candidates are not known to me for the first time in a long time. Some of the search, I'm going to have some folks that I'm going to be meeting, in places outside the Midwest, contiguous states. Of those 17, 14 are male and 3 are female. 8 of those 17 are sitting current superintendents of schools, which, you know, we talked about in our posting as a preference, that we were looking at giving some preference to sitting superintendents. 7 of those are current assistant superintendents, and then we had a couple that, in my mind, probably don't measure up to our initial requisite posting, but I do want to explore to make sure I'm still accurate on that. A couple that did not have that experience. But with reference to my note up there at the top for you, that is part of the initial work, and then I will go back probably Wednesday of next week and finalize, update that demographic depiction, send it to you via Janet, so you'll have it before and in advance of our meeting on the 8th, where we'll be in closed session and going through that entire work session, reviewing our candidate pool. Okay? At that evening, our goal will be to decide how many of those folks we want to move forward in the process and what our next step in the process looks like. So if you have not been giving that some thought to that, you might want to go back and look at some of those initial materials I gave you in terms of some options that we have available to us. We probably need to make some of those decisions that evening as well. Okay? I'll be quiet. Questions?
I don't have a question, but I do want to say thank you to everyone who completed the survey. And I also want to point out how thrilling it is to have a number of students who responded to the survey, which you started with, Brett. And I think that just speaks to how you connect with the kids. I think the kids know their voices are important to us, and I think they will let us, you know, they gave us great information. You've developed that ability, and so I say thank you to you, and I say thank you to the students and everyone else who completed the survey.
I think the first comment I made to Kathy and I when I walked in was clearly students in Rockwood have found their voice, and,
Right.
and when asked, they are not hesitant
Right.
to share.
Right.
And that's why I referenced the challenge about the student health and safety issues, and that's why I talk about, I mean, you know, I like to think that students knew me in Webster, but I wasn't DK, you know. So, you know, that's I think a really clear observation, Len. It's a good one.
Going to be. So that's going to be our challenge, is to find someone that will carry that.
It is,
forward.
but I got to also say, and I know you probably read it in there, but I am excited about the candidate pool. We're going to have some really strong candidates, and you're going to have some work cut out for you to come up with that best fit. So I look forward to helping you with that over the coming months.
Ask you a quick question.
Sure.
Sorry, about the survey data. Back to that. When I was going through all those comments, all I kept thinking was how useful all of that could be for a lot of different people in our district. Are we going to, is that a tool that we could utilize in some of those areas? Because those themes that really rose to the top, I mean, there were people being very honest in there about some really big concerns. And, you know, positive and negative, but...
It's a great point, Jamie, and to that, one of the reasons that I did take the time, and I joke a little bit, that it did take me a little while to go through. I mean, I'm old school. I highlight and cross off and start counting, and you know, 55 pages of reading at my age is the task. So I 100% agree with you that these findings could absolutely be helpful to other folks. It is your document. It becomes your document. You can do whatever you would like with that document, and everybody. And I believe you all received the entire, as did Janet and whoever you want to make that. I think we made it available to Kathy as well. So Kathy and I have already talked about using some of that data to generate an update for our community, for our staff. I think she's already got something. Knowing her, she probably has something ready to go tomorrow. But also then at the beginning of the calendar year, kind of an update for the community to keep them apprised of where we are in the process as well. But sure, principals may want to look at that. I mean, you know, different committees, absolutely.
When people filled it out, can you remind me what information can we pull from it? Would we know? We would know student, staff, or parent.
That demographic's broken down on that front page.
Yeah.
If you look at that,
okay.
You can go back there and you can find that way. Yeah.
And we also have the data from way forward. We have the blocking on the name of the tool that you used, Kathy. What did you?
Thought exchange, thank you.
Thought exchange.
Hello, hey, I'm learning.
Thought exchange. So we'll have a lot of great data for strategic
Right.
planning.
And I do
Yes,
have a
Dr.
couple
Kinder.
of questions and a
Okay.
couple comments. On the candidate pool, you said there are 8 of the candidates are currently sitting or former superintendents. Does that mean there may be a couple in there that have retired from another state?
No.
Okay. That's all I need to ask on that one. I think on the report, I think what is not on the report is as important as what is on the report. I didn't see a lot of negative anywhere. It was all positive, and I think that's a sign, congratulating Eric, but also congratulating the district on how it's functioned in the last 5 years. I think if we'd run this 4 or 5 years ago, it probably would have been just the exact opposite. It would have been everything they wanted to get rid of. That's number 2. I did have a text from Matt Dole. He said to let you know that he has read every single word of this report.
Great. And I had no doubt that he had.
Yeah. One last comment. Did you really say that your dissertation was on non-metric paranormal studies? You know what that means?
I do.
It means you've been watching UFOs and writing about it.
If you remember when you and I walked together at that graduation, I think I was just one step ahead. Or maybe it was behind you. I can't remember where you were in the line there. But yeah, that's absolutely what I used. Dr. Grady would be very proud of me right now.
Sure.
The questions.
Please
We're
get me
looking
out of here.
at-
Sorry.
We're looking at January 8th, and then a few
Yes.
weeks later, interviewing,
Right.
and then, okay.
And we'll
Do we need to
keep
get
everybody
some
apprised of that.
sort of date somewhere
My
at
question
some
is,
point?
at what point are we going to set the rest of this calendar so that we can get our
Right.
calendars set?
We really, I know you're going to hate this answer, Tam, but I think we really have to wait until the 8th to take a really hard look at the pool, because that will drive, I think, some of our decision-making with regard to next step in the process. Once we have that determination, then I think you got to come with your calendar, and then we got to hammer that out, probably that night. I know Janet's been bugging me about the same thing. She gets it. It'll be the hardest thing we do. Trust me, it'll be the hardest thing we do that night in getting the next calendar dates. Okay?
Questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Hey,
We are in good hands.
best of wishes for the holidays and coming New Year, okay? See y'all.
Yeah, holidays too.
As Brent's walking away, since he made the comment that he's no DK, I love to tell a quick Brent story. When he was the superintendent at Webster, you all are familiar with the Turkey Day game between Webster and Kirkwood, and Kirkwood oftentimes has their way with Webster, but there was one year in particular where Webster's football team, a couple of years where they were really good, and there's a little newspaper called the Webster Kirkwood Times, and so on the front of that newspaper was a picture of Webster handedly won that game that year, and on the front page was the football team carrying their superintendent as though he was the star. But the best part was the quote that he got a little bit of flack for when the headline quote was, the superintendent said something to the extent of, "Yeah, we really thumped them." Thanks, Brent.
Thank you.
All right, next we need a motion to approve the review of policy 1810, service animals, and policy 6255, animals in the classroom. We have a motion and a second, so we have Dr. Terry Harris.
And actually, as Terry's walking up, I don't even know that we need a discussion tonight, because we're simply asking for the ability to review this, because that's what the PIN process does. So we're not presenting anything tonight. We're not really asking for dialogue tonight. We'll have plenty of that when we bring something back to you. But the long and short of it, and I'll let Terry add anything to this if he feels I don't cover it, but our times have changed, and it's very, very common to see service animals in our schools, and we just need to make sure that our policy is aligned, and it's not. And we're, I think I can say as your superintendent, I'm very much in favor of better aligning the policy. I think that there is some great and wonderful things that come out of the use of service animals, and whether we like it or not, it's what's growing and it's what's expected, and we just need our policy to line. So all we want is permission through a PIN to go down that path.
So with it's 23 student services folks, we get together monthly, and this is probably one of the hottest topics that we talk about. So many school districts are asking their boards to review this policy. So I met with Dr. Counts and Dr. Canos, and of course this is our process. So to echo his point, we're just asking to get permission to look at the policy.
Ready to do this, following our policy.
It's a really interesting topic, because one of my students just sent me an article 2 days ago about the case that's going to court. Because there's a girl in a classroom, her allergy is to animal dandruff, and if she gets within 30 feet of a service animal or an animal, she gets sick and has to go to the hospital. And how they're trying to figure out how they can take care of her and how they can take care of the student with the service animal. I think that's a real dilemma, and it's a court case, but I think you have to dig into that and see what's going to happen on that, because there is no easy answer to that. I don't think. You can't say, well, you stay away 30 feet or keep the service animal away 30 feet. It just doesn't work. So it's a tough situation.
Else? So the motion is policy, those two policies. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, that passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Watch out for the deer on your way home. Next, we need a motion to accept the 2017-18 audit report, post-audit report, and secretary of the board report as presented.
Moved.
We have a motion and a second. So, Mr. Brian Wirtz from Kerber, Eck, and Brackle. How far off was I? Brackle.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Huh, okay, Brackle. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Yeah, my name is Brian Wirtz. I'm a partner with Kerber, Eck, and Brackle. We're the independent auditors of the school district. I've been asked tonight to give a brief presentation and overview of the audit and the results of it. So, the gentleman that was here before me and said he's hitting 59 or 53 districts. He probably thinks I'm stalking him because I've been behind him the last 10 times, it feels like. So in our presentation, we talk about what each other's responsibilities are when it comes to an audit. And it's management's responsibility to prepare the financial statements in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards. And to determine that the basis used to prepare the financial statements is appropriate in the circumstances. It's like, do I have the clicker? Maybe. There we go. I didn't know I had that. So these financial statements are prepared on, and basically on two bases of accounting. One, the government-wide financial statements are prepared on the full accrual basis of accounting, which is much like a for-profit entity. And the fund financial statements are prepared on the modified accrual basis of accounting. And then there's reconciliations in the financial statements to bridge the gap between the two. The biggest difference between the two is in the government-wide financial statements, we show fixed assets as an asset and accumulated depreciation, and we show our bond issues as debt. In the fund financial statements, when we purchase capital outlay, it's an expense. When we issue debt, it's revenue. When we make payments on debt, it's an expense. So those are the biggest difference between the two sets of financial statements. The other thing that's important is it's management's responsibility to maintain an internal control structure so that there would not be a material misstatement in the financial statements that would go undetected. And this internal control structure should also safeguard the district's assets due to fraud. Our responsibility then is to perform the audit and express our opinion on the fair presentation of the financial statements. Our assurance is not 100% assurance because we don't do 100% of test of transactions. So there is a minimal risk that there could be a material misstatement in the financial statements that could go undetected. But like I said, we're required to plan and perform our audit to make that risk to a very low level. In performing our audit, we do review the internal controls of the district, but we do not give an opinion on the internal controls of the district. That's outside the scope of an audit. As it relates to federal programs, or even as a part of our audit, we might test internal controls, but again, we do not give an opinion on those internal controls. We do perform our audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards, government auditing standards, and uniform guidance. And the uniform guidance is related to federal programs. We did issue an unmodified opinion this year, which basically, based on our audit, the financial statements are not materially misstated and are presented in accordance with GAAP. If during the course of our audit, if we found any instances of material weaknesses or instances of non-compliance, we would be required to disclose those to you, and would probably be in writing in our report if it was a significant deficiency or a significant deficiency that was considered a material weakness. We're happy to report that we did not have any material weaknesses to disclose to you this year. Federal programs, we do an audit of federal programs. We actually give 2 opinions related to that as well. We're required to audit a certain percentage of federal expenditures every year, and we're required to audit every major program once every 3 years. This year we audited the child nutrition cluster as our major program that got us our coverage. We issued an unmodified opinion on that as well as it related to compliance. We had no material weaknesses related to federal programs. And then the opinion on the uniform guidance, we had no issues of non-compliance with that as well. The 4th type of opinion we issue is related to state compliance, and that relates to budgetary, transportation, and attendance. We perform those procedures in accordance with attestation standards related as established by the AICPA. And again, we gave an unmodified opinion which states that basically we didn't find any non-compliance in those areas that would have to be reported to you. The significant accounting policies used to prepare the financial statements are Note 1 to the financial statements. The district did implement a new GASB this year, which was GASB 74, and that was related to OPEB benefits that the district gives to retired employees, and that resulted in a $50 million restatement in the net assets. So basically, we had to restate the net assets as of July 1st, 2017, and that made us incur an additional $50 million liability for those benefits that we're supplying those people. There are significant estimates in these financial statements. We're required to make you aware of those because when those estimates become reality, they could be significantly different than what the estimates are reported in the financial statements today. So we're required to make you aware of those. The most significant estimates in these financial statements are related to the pension liability as it relates to PERS and PSRS and the OPEB liability. And just so you know, your financial statements have about 37 pages of footnotes. Of the 37 pages of footnotes, 15 pages are related to PERS, PSRS, and the OPEB. I mean, it's just very complicated information, a lot of information in there. There were no transactions that lacked authoritative guidance. The financial statement disclosures were neutral, consistent, and clear. We encountered no difficulties in performing our audit, and we had no disagreements with management. As a result of our audit, also, if there were any audit adjustments that came to our attention, which means we would have to, if there was an adjustment that needed to be made to the financial statements, we'd be required to make you aware of that. So this year we had no adjustments to the financial statements as a result of our audit. We do obtain a representation letter from management dated December the 11th, which is the same date of our audit opinion, which is the date the financial statements have been approved and ready to be issued. And that representation basically is a letter from them to us stating that the financial statements are complete and accurate. They gave us all of the accounting records that we asked for. They made us aware of any contingent liabilities or subsequent events. Subsequent events would have to be reviewed through December the 11th. So from June 30th through December 11th, we'd be required to review any subsequent events and determine if there was a financial statement adjustment or disclosure that needed to be made. Anything after December the 11th, we're not required to analyze for these financial statements. If management had any other conversations with any other independent auditors throughout the year, we'd be required to disclose that to you. To our knowledge, they did not. Obviously, we'd like to express our appreciation with Paul and Dan and the rest of the staff for getting everything together for us. I think we're out here about two weeks at final, which is about as quick as we can probably do this audit. So it's been very efficient. And then just the last thing I'd like to mention is in this CAFR that's 150 pages, there is two certificates of excellence in financial reporting, one from MOASBO and the other one from GFOA. And basically, this will be submitted again for those certificates, but that's something that you guys should be proud of to get those things. And the comments that we get are very minimal and immaterial, I would say. So thank you if anyone has any questions.
How many years has your company been doing our audit?
Well, as far as I know, we started doing it in the 1940s. And then we lost the audit for a period of 5 years or something, probably in the early 2000s, I want to say, when Shirley Brose was here. And then we've been doing it since maybe the last 10 years, something like that.
I remember when the state did an audit, that was a completely different audit than what you did.
Right.
They were looking
They
for
probably
different-
looked at every transaction.
Yeah, they were looking at different things than what you were looking at. But you've never found, that I remember, anything more than just a couple little situations that come up. We've been pretty good over the years.
That's correct. That's correct.
Good. thanks.
We haven't had a material weakness or significant deficiency in some time.
Good. Thanks.
Yeah.
At least in 5 years, right?
Correct. My memory doesn't go past 5 years.
Wish mine didn't.
Else?
Great job. Thanks.
Thank you.
It's off
Thank you.
to you, thank you, but Dan and Paul and you that was something that, people are very pleased with, was the state of the district with our finances. So, good job. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This is college night, Rock Chalk Jayhawk. That's where my daughter and money go.
Oh,
Sorry.
there you go.
We need to take the
All
vote.
right.
We need to vote on that.
Oh, yes, I'm
We have a
sorry.
motion.
Thank you very much. We need a motion to accept the 2017-18 audit report, post-audit report, and secretary of the board report as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you, Mrs. Stadowski. Next, Mr. Paul Northington and Mr. Dan Steinberg, you're going to come up and talk about the proposed budget for 2019-2020.
As they're sitting down, I'll just kind of introduce the presentation and let them take over. I'm happy to tell you, you're going to find out really quick that once again, 5 years in a row, we're bringing a balanced preliminary budget. We have every intention, even though it's preliminary budget, to make sure that all the way to June, when you approve the final, that it will be a balanced budget. Things can change along the way, but that's been a kind of a staple in our administrative team's efforts, and we made no exception this year. And it's never easy because we always have to get down to making some decisions about cutting that we'd rather not, because they're never bad ideas. Everybody always brings, the whole team brings things that are very valuable, but we do that, and here we are. So I'll turn it over to these two fine gentlemen who do work well beyond anyone's expectations, and we're thrilled to have them.
Thank you. As Dr. Cano said, we do have a great team that works together in assembling the first parts of the budget. And just to kind of speak to that, just to walk you through the timeline, it's very similar to in what you've seen over the past couple of years. The budget process actually starts in October, so this past fall we started. And at that point, Dan and his team requested different departments to start compiling their budget requests for submission. And while we're doing that, Dan and the team are also looking at revenue forecast as we start the new school year. And things that also come into play of that is we have an enrollment count. We're looking at student enrollment. We're looking at staffing and all those things. And that takes place in October. And then in November, we meet quite a bit with our leadership team as far as reviewing the budget request and coordinating that with our revenue projections. Have several meetings during the month of November. And then that leads us to where we are tonight, to where we have a preliminary budget target that we're going to present to you, which is a balanced budget. In January, when we come back from the break, that will notify the departments and the buildings of the preliminary budget and the tentative allocations that will be awarded to them for each of their budget categories. And then we'll continue to update with our leadership team and the board as we get closer to the end of the year. And in May, we'll give you another update budget presentation, and then we'll bring a final one to you for adoption at the June meeting. So the first thing, really, when we started the budget process, Dan and his team will look at our revenue side. And certainly the biggest component on the revenue side are local property taxes. And so that's the first part of the forecast. And just to kind of give you a snapshot of what we're looking at, projecting for property taxes. In FY19, the current year that we're in, our tax base is about $3.7 billion. We know that 1920 school year is going to be a reassessment year. So typically our tax base grows more than a non-reassessment year. And we're projecting about a 2.5% growth in our assessed valuation for the 1920 school year. A good part of that's reassessment, but there's also new construction involved with that number. We're actually also anticipating the operating tax rate to stay basically the same. Very little fluctuation in it at this time. And we're also assuming a collection rate of 97.5%. That's been the historical norm for the district. With the exception of last year, we fell below that, but that seems to be an anomaly, something we'll continue to track. Based on those categories, we are anticipating an increase in local property tax revenue from $142 million to about $145.7, which is about a $3.5 million increase in revenue to work with for the 1920 budget. In addition to that, we also look at enrollment because it drives so many revenue streams and also things on the expenditure side. And we really start that process with our official September enrollment account. This year it was September 26th, and enrollment compared to the prior year was basically flat for the most part. We saw some increases in the elementary level, but they were offset by some decreases at the secondary level, middle school and high school. And we use those numbers to start our process to update enrollment going forward, and we usually do a 5-year look ahead for enrollment projections. And when we look at projections, we're looking at our cohort survival rate, which we're looking at what are grade levels doing from grade 2 to 3, 3 to 4, et cetera, and moving all that forward. We're also looking at residential development within the district and make an assumption there. And then we also know that we have the phase out of the BIC program. That's all districts that are participating in the program are having to go through that same thing as the program's being phased out within St. Louis County. And in projecting residential enrollment, we do it through in this case, through the 23-24 school year. A table here with a lot of numbers. I'll just kind of summarize it. The top portion of that is resident enrollment, and if you look at that first far left column, 18-19, that's our current enrollment. So right now we have about 19,400 resident students. We see that growing out for the next 5 years to a little over 20,000, 20,200, about an 800 student increase. On the VIC side is to phase out the program. We see that number where we're at today at 1,400 dropping to just above 900. Significant increase in VIC enrollment. And then when you put the two together, district-wide enrollment over the next 5 years, it's really just a modest growth. Right now we're at about 20,800 students, and we see that growing to about 21,200. Again, that's a work in progress. These numbers are continually updated, and as we get new information, these forecasts are updated. The thing to note when you look at the total enrollment down at the bottom of the page is you'll see elementary enrollment is increasing. It's going from 8,700 and projected to get up to 9,100. Middle school to a lesser extent, just maybe 100 student increase. But we're still projecting at the high school level that enrollment will probably continue to decline as some of those large class sizes are working their way through the district. And with enrollment, there's some things that drive state revenue, and I'll let Dan talk to some of the things as far as state funding.
Most of the factors in the state revenue for the basic formula is set by the state as well as legislative action, such as our SAT and our dollar value modifier, but enrollment does drive our attendance piece, so that's on there. So from a formula standpoint, we're allowed to use the highest of our 2 previous years or the current year. So that graph there, the top portion of that graph kind of gives you the last 2 actuals and then what we're projecting for this year as well as next year. So that total WADA number is the number that we're looking at it to be included in our formula. So the bottom portion of the graph shows the WADA that will actually we have in our calculation. So when we kind of combine that with our the other factors that the state provides, that kind of generates our revenue. So just wanted to point out, though, that in the previous slide, in the enrollment numbers, we are anticipating our resident numbers, so that WADA number is our resident number. We are projecting an increase in the resident side, but from a budget standpoint, we are keeping our WADA to where it was 2 years ago, because we actually want to see those kids in the seats before we kind of calculate that they're in our revenue numbers. So we are going to, for next year, 1920, we are going to use the 17-18 WADA of 18,425, and then we include that with summer school that adds to the 18,504 that will be included on our numbers here. So state formula is at 80% of their state revenue. The one impact that we had as that the state provided is our dollar value modifier. So it went down from 1.095 to 1.092. So even though our SAT, we're projecting it to increase from 6308 to 6338, we had an offset to that because the DVM went down, and that was about a $300,000 impact to that. So some of the increase that we would have realized from the SAT was offset by the decrease in the DVM. So, and then also our LEP threshold also increased. We had a significant increase in students, part of that included in that LEP number last year. That was offset this year by the increase in that threshold. So we're having less kids that we're able to include in our formula for that because of that increase. So overall, though, we are, as the graph shows, about $1 million in the 18-19 in state revenue, and because of the changes, we are projecting a $300,000 increase for 19-20. So those are the numbers that are included in our 19-20 assumptions. A couple things to note about the state, though. We're closely monitoring some of the information that's coming out of the state. We're just noticing that our income tax, general income tax collections at the state level is down from this point of the year to last year. It's down about 120 million. Our refunds so money coming, taxes collected by the state's down 120 million, but then also refunds going back out to the state is up 60 million. So we're about at $200 million at the state level. So right now we don't know what impact that has. It's just something to watch as we kind of head into the legislative season in January. So just something we'll kind of continue to monitor through next year. And then locally, the sales tax collections are up across the state. They're up about 2% year over year, so that is positive, and we're anticipating collecting on that. So we have an estimated 2% increase in our Prop C numbers. So combined with our attendance or WADA numbers, we've got about a $300,000 increase on our Prop C numbers included in next year's assumptions. Overall, the other revenue streams are relatively flat. Other local money as well as federal money remain relatively flat for next year.
So kind of just to recap where we're looking at as far as sources of funding for the current year and into next year. When we initially adopted our FY19 budget, we were projecting total sources of revenues of about $227.4 million. We've been able to update some of these revenue projections in a positive manner, both at the local level and to some extent at the state level. At the local level is about $1.2 million increase, and at the state level with additional funding in the formula that added about another $600,000. So as of today, we're actually projecting about $1.8 million in additional revenue from the time we adopted the budget in June. So revenue forecast now is at $29.3 million. And then when you look at FY20, we anticipate revenue going up about 3.7 million to 233 million. Again, the largest share of that will be at the local level through local property taxes. But we also do have an anticipated increase at the state level too. And this is just a pie chart that really shows where really emphasizes how much reliance we do have on the local level. Almost 80% of revenue come from local sources. And distant second is state at 18%. So you put those two together, it makes up the lion's share of district funding. And then you break that down further to local level, you can see 84% of our local funds come from property taxes, and to a lesser extent, about 10% come from sales tax, which is statewide generated, also known as Prop C, and then about 5% is from VIC. So once we have the revenue projections solidified, that generates our discussion for what we have for budget requests and expenditures. And that goes back to having our discussion with the leadership team in November and making those decisions to balance the budget. So we went through that process. Is where we are this evening as far as identifying revenues and then tying in the expenditures to where we can bring before you a budget balanced budget. So just to give you a recap of where we see things at this point, again, the initial adoption for this year for FY19, if you recall, we adopted a budget that had about $141,000 surplus. Due to the fact that we've been able to increase some of our revenue projections and we also made some adjustments on the expenditure side, we see our fund balance surplus going to about $774,000, which is a $600,000 increase over our original projections. It gets our fund balance percentage in that 21.4% range. If you'll recall, our board policy calls for 18% with a 4% kind of reserve or cushion. So we're right there at the upper end of that. Looking at it for FY20, when we put everything together, we're projecting revenues of $233 million, and at the same level for expenditures. So it's truly a tick-for-tack balanced budget. The surplus that we're projecting at this point is $7,200. One thing to note, even though we have a balanced budget, if you look at the fund balance percentage, it actually drops to 21%. And the reason for that is even though balances are staying the same, expenses are going up, and the fund balance is a percentage of expenditures. So really the point to note there, if you want to maintain your fund balance, you not only need a balanced budget, but you need some of a surplus to keep that fund balance percentage up. These numbers that we're looking at here are somewhat conservative, and we think we can pick up on that 7,200 and hopefully keep that fund balance percentage at a constant level in the upper 21%, somewhere that's defined by policy. So that is a real quick overview summary of a $230 million budget. So I'll certainly open it up to any questions you may have.
I do have a question. Brett, can you go back now eight slides? I'm counting. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. One right there.
Okay.
The last line down there, in 2017-18, you have an increase of 119,000.
11, yeah, almost 112,000, yes, sir.
Then the next year it's almost $1 million, and then you go back down to 256. Right?
Yeah.
So how do you go from 111 to 948? You may have told me that, but I can't remember what it was.
Well, there's a couple factors in there. One is the state adequacy target went from 6241 to 6308, and even though that doesn't sound like a big increase, each dollar in the SAT generates a lot of money for us at the state level. The other thing is the DVM that Dan spoke to went from 1.094 to 1.095. That also generates quite a few dollars as well. And to that point, and Dan alluded to this earlier, the DVM in 1920 is going to go down to 1.092, and that just for the DVM going down from 9.5 to 9.2 was how much?
100,000.
So it doesn't take much in movement in that to generate a lot of dollars.
Now that increase, that last line is over the previous year, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this year it was 111,000. next year projected 948, but then 256 over that 948. I mean, that's
correct.
already in there, right?
That's correct. So it's on top of each other.
Thanks. Yep. Pretty darn good.
All right.
You guys always impress me. Like, I have a math degree and I really love numbers, but how you guys can spit these things out the way you do is just so impressive. And estimate, and every year you get so close, and it's impressive. Very good. Any other questions or comments?
Get understandable.
Yeah.
Projected anything on that old Chrysler plant to figure in any of this?
No, I don't think that really figures in the equation.
That could help if they start building there, right?
Most definitely will.
Maybe the Rams will come back and go there.
There you go.
Let's hold our breaths. Dr. Kinder.
Thank you very much and have a Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Hey, Dan?
All right, Brenda Kirchhoffer, we are ready for you because we have a motion to approve the bond issue purchases and related contracts over $150,000 from Education Plus Resources, Inc. for purchase of the furniture for the newly constructed Eureka Elementary School fiscal year 17-18 bond issue. Hello.
Oh,
We have a motion, a second, and go ahead.
Thanks, Brenda.
okay.
Thanks for
fine.
moving.
No. Okay, I'm ready?
Ready.
Okay, so this is for the furnishings for the new Eureka Eureka Elementary School. We started the process about a year ago. Our team worked with the rep from CI Select, and we met with administrators and staff at the school many times to kind of go over what they wanted, what their needs were, and we came up with some really great furnishings for a large school. I think we have about 64 spaces that we were furnishing. So this number is inclusive of 99.9% of the furniture. There are some posture chairs that are going to be put in the music room that they couldn't provide, so we're going to buy those separately. But this is inclusive, so we're really excited. It's innovative furniture. The library is awesome, and the classroom furnishings are fantastic, and we're all really excited to get this building built so we can furnish it.
About what you planned or what you thought it might be when you started planning it?
It was pretty close.
Good.
We were a little bit above, just slightly, but freight charges have gone up, which we didn't necessarily anticipate that. And when we did the budget, it was about 2 years ago. So things in the industry have changed. Furniture prices have increased, unfortunately.
Take anything from
The
old to
existing
the
school,
new? Yep.
we try to. At their current elementary school, they didn't have, a lot of their stuff was older. Anyway, it's an older school. So we were able to reuse some storage shelving that they had. They're taking a lot of the basic stools that they're currently using, but a majority of it is new. But we do try to utilize whatever we can.
Excellent. Any other questions, comments? All right, so the motion is to approve the bond issue purchases over $150,000.
The only one on there?
Yes, it is. Yes. All right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Try to throw me off there, didn't you, Dr. Kinder? It almost worked.
Thanks, Brenda.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next is a proposed agenda for, you heard it, January 17th, 2019.
Ready to party.
Oh, my God.
Where's your, I thought everybody was going to wear one of these.
Camera out, Alice. I don't think I've ever
believe that.
seen one of those, let alone know we were supposed to wear one.
Walgreens, $5.
Okay.
Or $6, I'm sorry.
Okay, anything on the agenda? It's a long ways off.
On the 17th of
17th of January, 2019.
Biggest challenge for that is not so much what's on those agenda items, but just our business that needs to be handled with a full month in between there and any HR issues. So, but we'll still, I don't see that open agenda growing much
HR.
beyond. But just the business, just the
superintendent?
hiring and firing,
Okay.
and mostly hiring.
Oh,
hopefully.
yeah,
Yes.
hopefully only hiring. All right, anything on that? We're good? All right, next is future agenda presentations and events to attend. I have several things here. Just a reminder, Tuesday, January 8th, we are starting at 2:30, special closed session board meeting to go over Dr. Underwood, the superintendent candidates. Thursday, January 8th at 6 p.m., the NEA Negotiation Communications Lab. Lynn Midget, Jamie Bays, and Tamara Romberg. So you two, all three are going to have double duty. Thanks for representing, ladies. And Tuesday, January 15th, 2019 at 5 p.m., the board candidate filing closes. Any other agenda presentations or events to attend?
And you sent us one for, I think, April 25th, which is an awards night, but we're having it here?
I just changed the location on it.
I'm sorry, what?
No, it's at
Yeah, you did.
Yes,
Summit.
He listed it as here.
Oh, it shouldn't be. I changed it because the school was changed on it.
Well, no, you have another one in there not long after that, in May, I think.
Does the man
Kinder,
with
no one can take you
lights on his head.
seriously. Just so you know. What does it say? It does say annex, Janet.
Okay.
It's not the annex,
Oh, wait,
because later, Jamie and I present, a couple weeks later, don't we?
That thing on your head? I don't know. I'm not planning.
the awards night is on the 16th, so that's not really an awards night on the 25th. I just need to change the title on it.
Okay.
It is
You'll
here.
take care of it.
Yeah.
All right, very well.
Just a meeting.
Anything else on agenda? Oh, yes, Dr. Canoes, do you have something to add?
Not about the agenda, just, I didn't realize this, but I wanted to point out, I had a card sitting here I opened up, and Tony Kraus, who's been our faithful reporter for the Leader and covers the district very, very well, and I've always appreciated Tony's reporting and the questions he asks. He's thorough, he's fair, and just does a great job. So I have this card waiting here that I knew nothing about, but they're having some changes in their newsroom, and Tony will not be our beat reporter covering Rockwood anymore. So Tony, we will miss you very much, and we really, really do appreciate how you've treated Rockwood and reported so fairly, and you've just done a great job, and we're thankful for that. So thank you for that.
Miss you. All right, anything else? All right, everybody have a good break, and we'll adjourn the meeting.